This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, one more button there. We got 2 green lights now. Oh, there it is. It's warming up. All right, good evening, everybody. It is June 21st, 2021. This is a regular meeting for the City Council of Woodland. At this time, we're going to be going into executive session under RCW 42.30.110, Section 1, Subsection B, consideration of site selection or acquisition of real estate purchase or lease. In likelihood that disclosure would increase the price. We'll also be discussing, and I don't have that one in front of me.
It's 4230.110, parentheses 1, discussion with legal counsel about current or potential litigation. And then the third one is discussion with legal counsel about legal risks of current and proposed action. 4230.110.
Thank you, Mr. Randolph. We will be in executive session for approximately 30 minutes. Tell everyone to come back at 7:31 at this time.
This conference will now be recorded.
The time is now 7:31. We are extending the executive session an additional 20 minutes. So we will be back in session at 7:51.
Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.
The time is now 7:50. We will be extending from the 7:51 mark. We're back 1 minute early here. We'll be extending the executive session to, let's see, 8:15.
This conference will now be recorded.
The time is now 8:09. We are out of executive session, and we will be back into regular session at 8:15.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good evening, everybody. It is 8:17. We are back in regular session. At this time, we will call the meeting to order. Councilmember Graham. Councilmember Rounds.
Here.
Councilmember Chapman.
Here.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Here.
Oh, I kind of went out of order on the agenda. Let's wait. How about we just stand for the Pledge of Allegiance first? How about that? We'll do roll next.
What do you pre-check? Okay.
I'm just in a hurry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. I apologize.
You're excited.
All right, I'm excited. Councilmember Graham.
Here.
Councilmember Rounds.
Here.
Councilmember Chapman.
Here.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Still here.
Councilmember Plaza.
Here.
Councilmember Holland.
Present.
Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Smith called in this evening. He is on annual leave or personal time. I'll accept the motion to excuse.
I'll second.
Excusing Councilmember Smith by Councilmember Chapman and seconded by Councilmember Rounds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Smith has been excused. Over the weekend on Friday evening, we did crown a new Planters Day Queen. I do have the proclamation here, but in order to save time, I will not read it this evening. It is on recording though, and I encourage all citizens of Woodland to go and watch the crowning of our new Miss Woodland. Moving on to citizen communications for items not on the agenda. There's no one in the gallery this evening. If there's anyone online, now's your opportunity to make it known that you'd like to speak on items not on the agenda. Seeing no one, moving on to items on the agenda. Again, there's no one in the gallery this evening. If there's anyone online, now's your opportunity to step forward. Seeing no one, moving on to agenda approval.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of an agenda item, ordinance number 1486, to adopt a declaration of a moratorium against accepting applications which include residential units in commercial zones within the city of Woodland. This would be a first and final reading, and add that to next appropriate action item letter. G as in George.
And this is the emergency moratorium. Is that correct?
It is emergency moratorium, correct?
If council, or since we're discussing that, if we could put that in after the workshop this evening. We'll put that as action item G, ordinance number 1486. Ordinance to declare a moratorium against accepting applications which include residential units and commercial zones within the city of Woodland, first and final reading. I've got that by Mr. Frederickson,
I second it.
seconded by Councilmember Rounds. Do we have to have discussion on that, or is it just this is just a general approval?
This is the agenda.
Oh, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. We have no public hearings this evening. Reports from City Council. Mrs. Graham.
As we all know, Planners Day was last week. We had many virtual events throughout the week. Some of them were attended to quite well and some not, but that's the way the world goes. And as the mayor mentioned, we had coronation on Friday night here in the council chambers, and our name is Woodland is Gracie Shoemaker. We had a lovely crowd, a lovely court this year. We had our reverse parade Saturday morning. It was fun. As I told everybody, we had a police car, a fire truck, set of horses, classic cars, and music, and tractors, and that was it. So it was a small parade, and we had a few participants that come through. But that was what we could do this year, and it was very nice to see some of our people. Let's see, and I want to thank our police department, because as we know, the girls had done hand-painted rocks, did little scenarios, and every day last week, rocks were planted around the city of Woodland. And it was called Woodland Rocks, and they had a lot of fun, and it was 11:30 one night, and they had to go put the rocks out yet in one area, and they were confronted by our police department, and when they found out what they were doing, they actually guarded them while they hit the rocks.
Oh.
So I want to thank the police officers for doing that.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then we had our drawing yesterday, and that all went well, and now next year, we are already making plans for our 100-year celebration next year, so come aboard to Planners Day.
I'm excited.
Celebrate.
I'm excited for next year. I'm excited.
Got some good stuff going.
Anyone else? Reports of council? All right. Moving on to Finance Committee report.
Yes, we met this evening at 5:30 virtually and discussed both expenditures and revenue for the city. Expenditures are lower than revenue, so that's good. And really one of the things that we've seen is an uptick in the amount of retail sales taxes that we're collecting. So roughly year over year, we collected an additional $130,000 if you're comparing the month of May with the month of May in the previous year. If you do that on a 12-month schedule, that's about 1.5 million in additional revenue. So very pleased with that. We discussed a few water leaks and reviewed the annual report provided to, I believe, the auditors is what we reviewed. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 19th at 5:30. We're hoping that will be in the council conference room.
Okay. Thank you. Human Resources.
Yeah, we met today at 6 o'clock in person here in the council chambers. And pretty much the only thing we went over, we had some personnel changes. We had one employee recently decided to venture off into other avenues and left the employment of the city, which leaves an open spot, obviously, which we are now using temps to fill. And we are hoping to post the opening sometime soon. And that's about all we really talked about. Our next meeting is on Monday, July 19th, 2021 at 6 o'clock right here at the council chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Plaza. Mrs. Graham, Chamber of Commerce.
And the chamber office is still open 9 to 4, 7 days a week. We have started having our chamber luncheon meetings at Casa Tapatia at 12 o'clock on Tuesdays, and we are very happy to see people coming out and sharing experiences and moving forward with that. And then our golf tournament is August the 20th, so if you have teams, prizes, bag stuffers, we're looking for it all. And moving forward and trying to, get speakers. So if we can have a city speaker at some point in time to get a hold of Denise Miller at the office. And I think that's about it on that. And I have one remark to make from over the weekend, just really quick too. I had a Marine, ex-Marine, retired Marine, come up to me and a couple fellows, they stood there and looked at the flags that at Hospital Plaza, and something needs to be addressed apparently, that it is improper for the flags to be even, that the state flag should be lowered below the American flag. So that was a bit of information, and hopefully that can be addressed.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mayor, is it the same, we were just talking about this a second ago, flag here in council chambers. Is that correct? It seems to me that they're the same height.
Well, the one has the adornment on top. I'll find out. We can always move the other one down a little bit as well. Maybe the other one's good. Yeah, I'll figure it out. We will have it handled immediately. Mr. Fredericks.
I'm not sure who's going to be speaking in chamber, but from the city, but when there is, can we be notified of that?
Sure.
Because I would like to attend.
Okay.
I have a feeling I understand. I think I know what the topic is going to be, and I want to be there.
We don't know yet. When it does occur.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there lunch served at Casa Tapatia? Can I buy it?
My over lunch, yeah.
How much chips and salsa?
Yes. No alcohol.
Well, I won't be the speaker. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I was gonna say, you people drive me to drink. I just wrote it down. I did. I was like, oh, well, that's a good point to get that scheduled as well. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mrs. Graham. Moving on to reports of myself and Mr. Boyce this evening. Planters Days, another enjoyable event. I liked the folks that came out to the parking lots. You know, they couldn't come inside, but they were out in the parking lot cheering the girls on, so that was nice. And of course, being part of that for another year was amazing. Everyone should know, if you haven't already seen, Public Works did put out some signage down Garrett Street going into downtown of the repaving. As you're aware that there were some emergency repairs that needed to be done. That was brought before council a couple of weeks ago, probably 2-3 weeks ago, where we had to actually do some grinding before we could actually do the paving. I just want to let everyone know that that's going to be a 4-week process. Ms. Coleman says that it's going to be impacts there for about 4 weeks to that section, and that this is a 2-year project that we've been planning, and this was not something that was done to prevent activities from occurring within the city. Ironically, I think it was just a series of events that occurred, but we don't have time to venture out to shut down events or prevent people from coming and going within the city, not to mention the fact that that type of project cannot just be planned on the fly. That has been in the works for 2 years. So it is possible the things that you read on the internet are not true, Mr. Plaza. And then also one last announcement, July 6th, we will be back. That will be our first regular meeting in July. And as long as nothing occurs with the governor's orders, we will be back in here with staff and everyone back on the DS with chairs out here in the gallery. And that evening, as it is our first gathering, I've asked that we've been holding off on some recognition of some employees at the police department. So we will be having a reception at 6:30 that evening with presentation during regular council time at 7 p.m. So our first city event post-COVID will be recognition of our police officers and the police departments and all the wonderful things they've been doing over the past well over a year since we've been closed down. So looking forward to that.
And that's a Tuesday.
That's a Tuesday. Yes, that is a Tuesday. Thank you. Yes, because Monday is the holiday. So that will be on a Tuesday.
Well, Monday is the recognized.
Yes, July 6th. Make sure I got that right. I think it's July 6th. Yes. So we will be here having some fellowship. Hopefully, nothing changes between now and the 30th. Yes.
There was an event in downtown this Friday night.
Uh-huh.
Did it comply with all the city regulations? Was it on private property? Everything was good there?
It was. Thank you for asking, Mr. Fredericks. I know there was a lot of things. We were very active in engaging the organizer with communication. The city was not involved with that. We did not get permission for that, and it was all held on private property. My understanding is there were no reports of blockages or shenanigans, I guess, or sidewalks being blocked or roadways being closed. And that was the city's concern. But again, that was a private event, and the city doesn't get involved with private events such as those. So it's there was no permit given, and one wasn't needed at this time. Okay. Is that political enough?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Boyce.
Okay, just a couple things I wanted to mention. We're still working with the Clark Cowlitz Fire District regarding the annexation agreement, which will be used to transfer assets between the two entities. So that will come to City Council later in the year. Just wanted to let you know we're still working on it. Also, as the mayor stated, we're watching what's going to happen with the governor's office and keeping our fingers crossed that restrictions will go away at the end of the month. When that happens, we're hoping to reopen City Hall. Also, we will start taking reservations for city facilities, the rentals, after the 1st of July. The reason we're not taking reservations right now is simply because we need some certainty over what's going to happen, and we really don't have the staff to cancel reservations on a large basis. So hopefully things go as planned. We can reopen July 1 and move on from there. So those were the two items. Just also wanted to mention the Planning Commission meets July 15th at 7 p.m. And that is my report for this evening.
Questions for Mr. Boyce? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Moving on to consent items.
Move to adopt consent items.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Frederick, second by Councilmember Plaza. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to action items. Action item C, ordinance number 1485, interloan fund from Fund 301 to Fund 320. First and final reading.
Move to adopt 1485, first and final reading.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Frederick, second by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Fredericks.
We discussed this evening in the Finance Committee meeting, and this is in line with what we need to do here. We have a shortage in this fund, so we are making a loan to it. It will be paid back with interest, and it will comply with all audit fiduciary requirements of the state. So I am urging adoption.
Councilmember Rounds.
No comment.
Further discussion. Councilmember Plaza.
Quick question, real. Just a quick question, real quick. On the first page, it says that the interest, said loan shall bear interest at the rate of 0.14%. But on page 2, in section 1, it says said loan shall bear interest at the rate of 0.10%. So which one is it? Well, 0.
And the first one was, what was the first?
Question for Ms. Anderson, because there are two different numbers, but I believe
What was on the first page?
14.
0.14, 0.14%.
Okay.
But there is 0.10 on another page. And
Yeah.
I believe that that's the number. Ms. Anderson is still with us.
She's not. Oh, well, maybe she is. Mrs. Anderson, are you on the line? Got a couple of organizers here. Mr. Boyce?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. So the correct number would be what's in the ordinance? The 0.1077.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Plaza. Further discussion? Thank you, Mr. Boyce. All right, seeing none, we'll take the roll on action item C, ordinance number 1485. Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to action item D, authorize mayor to sign agreement to extend the completion date for housing grant.
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement to extend the completion date for the housing grant.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Fredericks, second by Councilmember Holland. Councilmember Fredericks.
I have no discussion.
Councilmember Holland.
No.
Further discussion? All right, I'll take the roll on action item D, authorize mayor to sign agreement to extend the completion of a housing grant, Councilmember Graham. Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
That'll be a no.
Okay. Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
The ayes have it 5-1. Moving on to action item E, ordinance number 1477, adoption of 2018 International Building Code, first and final reading.
Move to approve action item E, ordinance 1477, adoption of 2018 International Building Code. First and final reading.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Plaza, seconded by Councilmember Chapman. Councilmember Plaza. Councilmember Chapman. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take the roll on action item E, ordinance number 1477, adoption of 2018 International Building Code, first and final reading. Councilmember Holland. Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to action item F, ordinance number 1479, adoption of 2018 International Fire Code, first and final reading.
Move to approve ordinance 1479.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Chapman, seconded by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Chapman.
No comment.
Councilmember Rounds.
No comment.
Further discussion, Mr. Fredericks.
Yeah, I have an issue with this as it stands. I'm going to refer to section 903.2.11.3, which says buildings greater than 2 stories in height, all buildings greater than 2 stories in height shall have installed an automatic fire sprinkler system. So what this means is, we're also talking about housing affordability. What this means is that every home constructed that is 2 stories in height in the city of Woodland, roughly at a cost of $1.35 per square foot on a 2,500 square foot home, raises the price to $3,375. So as far as I'm concerned, that seems like a lot to me. In a report by the NFPA in July of 2017, on page 19 of that report, The NFPA said that 29,800 sprinkler activations caused system failure or malfunction, and 33,600 for unintentional sprinkler activations in 2014. What this means is that if your sprinkler system fails, you're going to get stuck with a very nice bill. Now, I understand the fire department wants to keep us all safe, and we ought to never have any issues that would ever prevent fire, or never have anything that, God forbid, that would happen to you. We're trying to keep you safe in everything that we do, but we need to understand that there's a cost associated with that. And I don't necessarily agree with that cost. I think it's too much for the value of the home. So therefore, I'd like to make a motion here that would override the motion that's currently on the floor. I'd like to refer this item to the Public Safety Committee for recommendation and further study on those costs. And at that point, Mr. Jackson can make his case about why this is so wonderful and good for everyone and why we should adopt it. But at the same time,
Mr. Fredericks, did you want a second on that motion?
yes, I'll stop.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Councilmember Frederick, second by Councilmember Rounds to take action item F, refer to the Public Safety Committee for recommendation with study. Mr. Fredericks.
Yes, and specifically what I'd like to study is the additional costs associated for those homes. And I don't necessarily disagree with a commercial establishment, if that's what you want to do. But I think in the spirit of making homes affordable, which is what we talk about all the time, I think asking everyone to pay, most of the homes in my neighborhood are two-story homes. My home would cost roughly $5,000 to equip it with, on new construction. That's what the cost would be to put fire suppression in my home. I think that's, we have some new homes that are going to be going in off of very close to this Collins area. I don't even know what we would refer to that area as. Someone else speak to that, but if they're two-story homes, all of those homes would require a sprinkler system. 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, you're looking at $3,500, $4,000 additional, and that'll get passed on to fire.
Can I give you some information real quick? Chief Jackson has just responded saying the language is for buildings over 2 stories in height, not 2-story structures.
Over 2 stories in height. All buildings greater than 2 stories in height. So then I would ask Mr. Jackson, anywhere in this, does it require sprinkler systems in residential homes less than 5,000 square feet?
Chief Jackson.
I believe I understood the question. It was asking about requirements for fire sprinklers in 1 and 2 family homes other than the 5,000 square foot requirement?
No, in residential structures over 5,000 square feet or greater. Or was that the question?
So the question is,
Yes.
there anything, if there's anything,
Residential structures would require fire sprinklers if they're over 5,000 square feet, if they're over 2 stories in height, or in the areas where there are limited access. So flag lots, private drives, private bridges, which are pretty few and far between and not really much of an issue in the city. But those with those access restrictions would require fire sprinklers.
so nothing less than 5,000 square feet on a residential would be required?
Unless it has an access restriction, like it is on a flag lot, has a slope greater than 12% to get to it. Narrow private drive, private bridge, or is greater than 2 stories in height. That is correct.
Well,
So those things that I just listed were larger than 5,000 square feet.
Mr. Jackson, I stand corrected, and I completely read that in error, and I will be voting against my motion.
This is fun. Mrs. Rouse.
No comment. I agree with Mr. Frederick, so.
Further discussion? Seeing none, motion on the floor is to refer action item F to the Public Safety Committee for recommendation with study. Councilmember Chapman.
No.
Councilmember Holland.
No.
Councilmember Plaza.
No.
Councilmember Graham.
No.
Councilmember Rounds.
No.
Councilmember Fredericks.
No.
I thought you were going to say aye. The motion has failed. Back to the original motion on the floor by Councilmember Chapman and seconded by Councilmember Rounds. Adoption of ordinance number 1479, 2018 International Fire Code, first and final reading. Councilmember Chapman.
So,
Councilmember Rounds.
No comment.
Further discussion.
The only language that I thought that there was equal to 2 stories in height. Apparently I was adding my own language. Thank you. Thank you for going down that rabbit hole with me.
15 minutes, we'll never get back. Anything else? All right, we'll take a vote on action item F, ordinance number 1479, 2018 International Fire Code. Councilmember Fredericks. Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
aye.
The ayes have it. The time is now 8:46. We are moving into a workshop. 3 different items. The first one on the list is housing affordability study. And I'm going to kick this over to Mr. Goddard.
Mr. Mayor, I will be presenting tonight.
I'm sorry. I forgot. I'm sorry. Yes. Melissa.
Yes, thank you. I am screen sharing now. Are you able to see this?
We're good to go.
Wonderful. And you can hear me okay? Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, City Council. I'm Melissa Johnston. I'm Associate Planner with City of Woodland in the Community Development Department. And I have been working with Travis Goddard on the Housing Action Plan grant. One of the deliverables that we are required to do for this grant is a housing needs assessment. So I'll be presenting the data that we have collected for this assessment and analyzed. So this is informational tonight, and you will see this data referenced in future conversations when we discuss adopting our new proposed housing action plan and when we discuss the code changes down the road. So tonight this will be a walkthrough of our current local housing data, future needs, and we'll be projecting out to 2040. So for the data sources, I compiled these data using a workbook provided by the Washington State Department of Commerce for housing needs assessments. And the sources of data that I used are from the Census Bureau, the American Community Survey, the 5-year survey, also data from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, that's HUD, and I used their CHAS data, the Comprehensive Housing Affordability Strategy. I've used our comprehensive plan and Zillow. All of this data was customized for Woodland city limits. Here's a look at our population projection. We were at 5,912 population in 2018. We're around 6,000 now. We're projected to have 9,600 people in 2040. That would be average annual growth of 3% per year. As far as our household size and the age of the occupants, we look to be staying about the same between 2010 and 2018. Our average household size is about 2.94. That's a little higher than the national average. And it looks like the ages of our occupants haven't changed too much over these years. We did see a little bit of an increase in renters versus owners. So as far as housing units, by far we have more single-family residences than any other type of housing, and that's still growing steadily. I'll point out that the percentage column you're seeing on the far right is percent total of the 2018 column. So we have more single-family residences than any other type. About 67% of our housing is single-family residential. And here's a look at how large our housing is in terms of bedrooms. In 2018, about 35% of housing units had 2 or less bedrooms. 65% of housing units had 3 or more bedrooms. And just to keep in mind, our average household size is 2.94 people, a little less than 3. So household income, our household income in Woodland is just shy of $62,000 per year. Then I will use that to talk a little bit about home ownership affordability. So here's a look at our median household income. Again, that's about $62,000, and this is broken down into income brackets. And then also notice at the bottom of this table, we're now looking at the average home sale price in our community is $442,491. So looking a little bit more deeply into affordability, again, our average home price is $442,000 or so. And then if you look at the given expenses that would go along with a home purchase of that price, that would require an annual household income of $94,000 to afford or comfortably afford a house of that price. A bottom tier home in our community is $353,000 about. Bottom tier means a typical value for a home that falls within the 5th and 35th percentile range for a given region. So to buy a bottom tier home in Woodland, you would need a household income of about $75,000 a year to afford one of our bottom tier homes. So keeping in mind that our average income is around $62,000, about 75% of our population cannot afford an average priced home in our community, and around 60% cannot afford a bottom tier home in our community. In general, what stuck out to me as I went through this data and analyzed it is that in general, houses in Woodland are pretty large. We over 50% are 3 bedrooms or more. And how expensive the houses are in comparison to our average income definitely stuck out to me as I look at this data. So I'll leave us with this general overview here, this big picture. This is a look again at our upcoming growth. We're expecting to need to provide for about 57 households per year for a total of 1,315 by 2040. And so we'll be looking at this data as we do our proposed housing action plan. We'll be continuing to look at this data as we are looking at our code changes that we're going to provide. So you'll keep seeing these data as we bring these projects to you down the road. As we are still working on this project, I am interested if you have any questions or thoughts, or if you have any data analysis that you would like for us to add to this housing needs assessment. Thank you.
Councilmember Fredericks. Oh, Mrs. Rounds.
I was just gonna say, it seems funny to me that when any house goes on sale here, there's a bidding war on it. So if we're only at $46,000, how can they bid up these $350,000 homes and just keep bidding on them to buy? So I think the cost or the average of their household incomes are higher than what we're projecting. They're just not people moving here. Woodlanders are not. They're moving here. Right, but Woodlanders, existing Woodlanders, they like the local bracket, and those folks cannot afford a house currently for sale in Kingston. So or any other town then? Well, not in this town, the town in which they live. But I know, but I don't think they could in the other towns either. That's why everybody's going north. Like literally a house on the lake in Longview. And then some on top of 50-year-old house in my neighborhood, 350. But I think after the moratorium is taken off, where houses, the price of houses are going to go down because people that have not been paying mortgages, there's gonna be a flood on the market. And so I think we'll have on the housing and it will be affordable.
Councilmember Fredericks?
Two things. I would make a case that you want affordable housing, leave the area. I mean, really, that's you want affordable housing, look where places are affordable. I think with you, Florida, Texas, and Tennessee, very reasonable costs, very low regulation.
Idaho.
Idaho is becoming more expensive in Boise area, but I think that that's really, for whatever reason, the costs here are higher. Not sure what's driving, but it's nice to know that it isn't fire suppression systems and homes that are driving that cost. One of the questions that I do have, Ms. Johnson, is there a direct correlation between the cost of labor and the cost of homes? So when you argue this, you make a case of everybody should be paid a living wage. Maybe living wage now is $15. That's what it was. They told us we had to get to 15. We see these rising wages. Is there a direct correlation with rising wages, costs for homes and rent?
I understand or hear the question correctly. Is it if we raise minimum wage, then does housing prices increase afterward?
Yeah, is there a direct correlation between those two?
Mm.
And rent?
That is a good.
Mortgage and rent.
And rent. So that's a great question. I haven't looked into that before, but I can report back at a future council meeting, or Travis Goddard can report back.
Well, it just seems to me when you raise the price of wages, something else has to go up. So, or you change your behavior. An example would be when I go to McDonald's now, there's not 3 people at the cash registers anymore, there's 1. And there's a spot for me to do my own order. So the market kind of drives that. So I guess that would be the reason I raised that, is if you raise the price of something, in this case, labor, does that have a direct correlation for housing and rental costs? I'm curious.
I'm gonna turn.
I have a strong sneaking suspicion that it does, but is there any statistical evidence that's non-biased that points us in that direction? When I say non-biased, sometimes we have biased information that we get from the housing and urban development group that might argue otherwise, but I'd be really interested to see if you could drum up anything.
Well, numbers technically aren't biased. And so it stands to reason, well, depending on whose numbers you go. Well, that's the thing. But of course, if you raise the cost of labor, for example, just to use one industry, the lumber industry, which is part of building a house. You raise the cost of labor, the cost of wood is going to go up, which is going to raise the cost of your house.
Well, I agree, Mr. Claus. I think it raise labor, it raises the cost of everything. So when you talk about a $15 minimum wage, why don't we make it $50 and everybody will be paying $15 for a gallon of milk? But everything raises when you raise the price of labor. Yeah.
Well, in the real world it is, but when you're doing, not to go off on a tangent, but in the world of politics, where all you care is about getting the message in order to get the vote, you know that you can tell everybody, hey, we'll just raise the minimum wage to $20 and we'll all live happily ever after. The majority of people aren't going to look into it and see what the real world effects are. And that person's going to get the votes, and then they're not going to do anything.
Excellent. Well, I just wanted to raise that because it seems as though when you raise the price of labor, everything else goes up. And I was wondering, does it raise the price of rent? And does it raise the price of buying a home? It seems to me that it would, but I don't know if Ms. Johnson can find any data that tells us that. I'd be interested in it.
I'm going to kick this over to Mr. Goddard right now as well. He's got some comments he'd like to share.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So there's another wrinkle in this that I would also like to throw out on the table for your consideration, and that is one of the statistics Melissa discussed, and that is that the majority of construction within the city of Woodland has been single-family residential. And one of the odd quirks is that typically you would expect single-family residential to be owner-occupied, which means your renters, the percentage of renters in the community would go down as you build more houses and there is less multifamily, whether it be apartments or condominiums. You would think the number would be related. But in fact, what has been happening, and we've been seeing this in the planning industry kind of across the board, and that is the American dream is changing, not necessarily because families don't desire to build homes, but because wealth is built in real estate. And so you're getting massive amounts of commercial investing in the real estate market. And they turn around and rent those homes after they're constructed. So whereas, in the 50s on, the family's single most valuable asset was the home, whereas now, as was brought up by a couple of the council members, the average family is not able to come up with a bag of cash so that they can purchase a home when it's on the market, whereas the commercial investing industry can. So they're often bidding things up and making it unaffordable for single-family residential, which is why you're starting to see this reversal, because a large number of the homes, and I've read articles up to 40% of the homes that come on the market are bought by investors, and they are not bought by single or families. So that's going to be a disturbing trend going forward, especially if you only build single-family residential. And we know we have some multifamily projects that are coming on board, and we know those are not owner-occupied. Those will also be rentals. So it's entirely possible that Woodland could trend significantly in the future towards significantly lower owner-occupied homes, whether we build single-family or multifamily. So that is affecting the housing market across the entire country. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Mr. Fredericks?
It seems like we're trying to promote affordability. And I think we're trying to nudge people in the direction of affordability, but in my mind, the market will drive demand of an item. So in this case, right now, we have a hot market. Prices are going up. We've got inflation going up. Is there a point where you see where policy could be made that government is going to start building homes because government can make things more affordable? Because they can make anything more affordable if they want to and subsidize it. Do you see us ever getting to a point where that's exactly what we're going to be doing is very similar to what we might find in, say, Russia, China, where we are providing a government residence at a subsidized cost, which will then, I guess, would deflate the market, because you can't compete against the government.
Was that a question to me?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Goddard.
That is a really hard question to answer. I can see that there are going to be some jurisdictions who are going to be able to find ways to take action. But I also believe that the future of government is especially in Washington State where you're limited to 1%, is I believe governments are going to have to start cutting and significantly cutting our public services, not providing additional services. So I don't believe the market will allow the government to take action in significant ways like you're talking, where like, for example, the city of Woodland building residential units and making them affordable. I'm sorry, I just don't think that the financial picture for the city of Woodland would allow us to be to even consider moving in that direction. I don't think it's realistic.
I should be clear, Mr. Goddard, I was talking about the federal government,
Oh.
not local jurisdiction or even state. But the federal government having subsidized housing and doing what a dream of any city planner would be, is shoving many, many people into the smallest space possible at a subsidized reduced cost picked up by the taxpayer.
In my opinion, the answer to that is no, but I'll be honest, I don't know enough about national politics to think that whether that's realistic or not.
Just curious on your thoughts, Mr. Goddard. Thank you.
I do have a question. Have we looked, so that was the data and the information that was given during the presentation was for individuals within the, as I make my way around town and listen to and even other organizations within town that service beyond the city limits, have we looked at the county versus the city and what their needs are? I know the school district would probably say that, well, that's great and all that you're showing 64,000, but you know, we have a large student population where it's a single family household and maybe they're only making 40,000, because we are a city that services a number of individuals outside of the city limits with organizations and services. So is it possible that we could look at those as well, or is that too big of a scope?
I think we can look at that because I believe Cowlitz County is looking at their housing action plan as well. In fact, a lot of communities in Southwest Washington, we're all doing the same grant program right now. So we all have similar data sets. I can get their data. They've probably already done this analysis. If not, it would be with some work possible for me to replicate this study for Cowlitz County.
I think the one problem we are going to run into, though, is when we compare the two is Cowlitz County does not collect impact fees for schools, parks, fire, and transportation. And I think the city needs to be very careful about making our affordability plan to include the county, the growth of residential development in the county, because right off the top, it's, you know, $12,000 cheaper to build in the county. That's because they don't pay their fair share of schools or fire impacts or transportation impacts. So I think it would be bad policy for us to consider that as, or we just need to be very careful when we're comparing apples to oranges for that exact reason. Because the only other option would be for us to start waiving our impact fees so that our homes are also cheaper.
So it'd be more affordable for people to move out in the county.
Yes.
So we should move that.
Well, as long as you don't mind subsidizing.
Well, no, I know. I don't want to do that, but we have impact fees that increase ours.
So then that's the old adage of who should pay for it. We already paid our way. Should we just not put no impact fees?
Right.
We have no impact fees. Like, but then that's how we paid our way.
Great just have to be careful that we don't get any more subsidized housing this year because we're already in bad shape now.
Any further questions for Mrs. Johnston and the information presented?
I just kind of think it's interesting that exists for a reason, and you have housing authorities in every county everywhere, building multi-unit places. So there's one by William Park, I think that won't be. That one, Housing Opportunities in Southwest Washington, is overseeing that lovely huge apartment complex. And Vancouver owns subsidized properties all over for people. So like while we were having this conversation, I was looking at OSPI for the school district, because last year, half the school district, half the kids in the school district were low income. So that would imply that they all live off the city limits, I guess.
Well, I guess I would have to ask the question, what exactly is considered low income?
That is
I would need to start there for me. That's
right.
so I can understand.
Because last year, you can't really count as the, during COVID, they made it so that, gosh, you could make like 70K and still qualify for a reduced lunch.
Okay.
Any other time, it's, I think that's called, they seem to think it's like.
Okay.
I'd have to look. This last year, kind of, I ignored all of last year because it was insane. They changed the rules for everything. But yeah, but it's just kind of interesting. That's how. So I don't think anybody remembers that, like Tulip Valley, for instance, that's an apartment complex. Upland House was an apartment complex for assisted living, and then the apartments across the way they were all owned by commercial realtor people, privately owned, I guess. And then the housing authority purchased them, took them over. They were once, I think they just kind of got disrepair. Housing Opportunities in Southwest Washington owns almost all the different. I don't know if anybody knows that. I just find it one of the biggest apartment complexes here. We have poor people. Poor people have a different place to live. Anyway, that's just my comment. Just because.
Thank you, Mrs. Holland.
Very good plan. Challenges is how much is enough? I really do think that is something that's on the ballot selection here is how much but how much and are the folks that are living around us, are they taking on their fair share of having these types of high density residential in their neighborhoods, like Richfield, like the center, like Alama.
Right.
It seems as though, and I'm not going to, it seems as though we get more of our fair share in this community of that. And I think that time and time again, I hear pleads from the school board, not the school board, but school folks that work in schools about please be careful with your policy on allowing this city of Woodland. Very careful on what you allow because you're killing us. And so I agree that yes, they need a place to live, but I think the argument becomes how much is enough for one community.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, and I think there's a fine line with, oh, let's just let them keep coming, and I think that's the big concern with a lot of folks that, especially schools, I hear from them the most.
you're not gonna draw any people that wanna have a nice home.
Well, I think you're gonna make the picture look a lot worse than it is.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Johnston. We appreciate the data and look forward to the next time we get to discuss that. Did you have anything further for council on that topic this evening?
Nothing more this evening, but we'll be continuing this conversation in future hearings and workshops. So thank you for the feedback tonight.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Goddard, Housing Action Plan, are you ready?
I am, if you have the PowerPoint ready to be shown.
I do, if I can get it to, there we go. We're just a little slow. Okay, there you go. Can you see my screen or no?
So it looks like we are.
How's that?
I am not seeing it.
Oh, waiting for people to see your screen. Okay, there we go. How about now?
Yep, that looks good.
All right, take it away.
And you should be able to maximize that.
Which button do I don't want to hit the wrong button?
You'll need to hit the 3 dots and then change out of the presenter view. Then you
Oh, 3 dots. Hide presenter view.
Yes.
All right, how about now?
Does not look like it has come through.
All right, just a moment.
Perfect.
Now you can press F5 and be good to go.
I'll press F5.
Okay.
Oh, I don't have an F5. There isn't anything up there. There's nothing there. Oh, there it is. I see it now. F5. Hold on. Control. No, function. There we go. Take it away, Mr. Goddard.
Okay. So this is a continuation of the discussion that we had in May, and we had brought forward some code changes that we were going to take to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission since reviewed the code changes and made some recommendations with 3 changes or with 3 conditions, and that was in your packet. And we sent those to the Department of Commerce to review under our grant. And the Department of Commerce found that what we had originally proposed for in the grant, that we were not technically meeting all of the condition or all of the items that we were trying to achieve in our grant, which is why they have offered to extend it for some additional time because of the challenges of COVID and the fact that we've had limited public interaction and the ability to hold open houses. The ones we did hold had very limited attendance. So they'd like to give us some additional time because we have, as I'm going to present here, a significant chunk of the work done, but not all of it done. So if you could go to the next slide, just to remind you, the Housing Action Plan grant is based upon House Bill 1923. There we go. Which is the purpose of that bill in 2019 was to increase urban residential building capacity, essentially to pursue residential building capacity and housing affordability projects, code changes, and in this case, building projects. So next slide, please. You're going to see a list. These are all of the potential code changes that were allowed under the State House Bill in 2019. And the ones on the right are the ones that we did not or could not pursue because we don't have light rail or transit corridors. We don't do sub-area planning. We don't have any plan to action provisions, and we don't use a form-based code. So the ones on the left were the ones that I felt after reviewing the bill that I thought we would be able to achieve. And so we started pursuing 8 of these. If you can go to the next slide. Commerce reviewed the deliverables and found that 5 of them were met, and they recommended that additional time. Sorry, I covered this already. Go ahead, next slide. Thank you. So the ones that they felt we had we were looking at implementing is the 9-lot short plat, which is a subdivision process that would allow up to 9 lots through an administrative review. That means it would not require hearings examiner. It would not require review and approval by the city council. There's also H, the SEPA exemption for infill and mixed use. There's corner lot duplexes, and our code implemented that change. Also lot size averaging, we met that code. Now they also identified one where we achieved portions of it. But the good news is in 2020, during COVID, the state legislature made changes to this code or to the RCWs, and it allows a lot more variety of housing changes that we can make to our code to achieve the goals of our grant. So if you go to the next slide. The problems they had specifically were we tried making changes to our planned unit residential development code, and the state legislature asked for changes to our zoning code. So PURDs are a subdivision type. They are not a zoning type. So that's why C and D didn't meet Commerce's standard. Also, action item L was for setting minimum density of 6 units per acre, and we had proposed adding that 6 unit per acre minimum in the multifamily zone, but it did not change the low density zoning. And technically we don't meet the state requirement because we are only affecting some of our zones, not all of our zones. So we didn't meet that standard. And also accessory dwelling units, specifically the code said back in 2019 that you needed to allow accessory dwelling units in new residential zoning districts. And what we did is we kind of skipped that stage and went to ways that we could streamline and make accessory dwelling units more attractive so that we could build more of them in our community. But technically we didn't add them to a new zoning district. So that's why that one didn't meet the standard either. Next slide. Thank you. So tonight we'll just do a quick focus on the 5 that we did meet. And if the council approves it, that we would return the remainder of the code sections that you would like the Planning Commission to review. We'll return it to the Planning Commission to do more work. And the reason why this is possible is because ecology, our grant was going to run out at the end of June, but since they're going to give us additional time, we can take the concerning issues back to the Planning Commission. So this is the first of the code changes. Would you like me to discuss how this affects our code?
Oh, Mr. Fredericks has a question. Yes.
Just a question, Mr. Goddard. So we apply for a grant, we get a grant, we do the work, we send it back to the Department of Commerce, pokes holes through it, and then send it back to us to review it again. Is that the process here?
No, so what technically happened is we were doing the work, we just ran out of time. And I was originally, when I brought this to you last month, I had thrown all of the code changes at you, and I was going to bring them to you tonight for a first and final reading so that we could meet the deadline and we could qualify for the grant money that we had received from the state. But a couple things have happened and things have significantly changed recently. And that is a few months ago, we had the Kirkland Senior Living, which was a request to build residential in the commercial zone after it was a comp plan amended from light industrial. And that was denied. And that was 150 units. We also have had a recent significant discussion, and you are currently reviewing an appeal on the Belmont RV. And there was some question about whether or not that is residential in character in the commercial zone. And we entertained a pre-application conference for a mixed-use commercial residential development off of Franklin Loop, which is the little spur off of Belmont Loop. And so we are looking at significant residential issues on top of while we're trying to make changes to our housing code. So the fact that we have extra time means I think we should go back and take a look at some of the holistic issues that we didn't get a chance to cover under the code. And that's part of the contributing factor why Commerce, accepted 5 out of the 8 that we proposed, but they feel that we need to make a few more tweaks. And as part of that conversation, they pointed out, hey, you now have twice as many options as you did before. Why don't you pick some other code changes that you're already considering, and then we wouldn't be under the gun to make some controversial changes that the council may not be interested in doing just because it's mandated by a grant. So I'm trying to make your lives easier by giving you more options with the new grant as opposed to trying to slam the old grant down your throat.
Less options are better. And I'm saying that jokingly. But can you just, I'll let you go on unless there's other questions, but can you tell me, I think it's important to know that the legislative body would be giving up some of its power, the executive branch of government. Can you tell me why that's a good idea and why that's good to work on?
Well, so if you take a look at the cover of the agenda memo for tonight's agenda item, it shows you some possible housing ideas. And because all jurisdictions are not one size fits all, what works for large communities in the Puget Sound, like adding 6 units per acre minimum lot size or minimum densities, it may work in large jurisdictions, but it doesn't work in Woodland because it would require us to basically rezone all of our single family residential zones. And I tried to make changes to our planned unit residential development code rather than changing all of our zoning, because I wanted to make it a developer's option as opposed to a forced rezone of virtually the entire city's single family zones. So in that sense, this flexibility gives us options that we didn't have before if we wanted to successfully complete our grant.
Mrs. Rounds?
What if we don't accept all the code changes? What if we decline some of what happens?
So this grant is specifically set up based upon deliverables. And so we delivered a public involvement plan. We will deliver the housing action plan, a draft housing action plan. And if we adopt that as a final document, then we would get an additional slice of money. We have the vacant buildable lands that was done. That was the analysis for how much land we had left within the city limits. So that's a portion of money. And then also the needs assessment that Melissa was talking about today. So there are different slices of the money, the pot of money that come for different parts of the project. And each one of those code changes that is listed has a deliverable fee of about $1,850 per unit or per code section. Now, the fact that we are looking at 5 of the 6 or 5 of the 8, if you don't want to adopt the other 3, it just means we would forfeit about $4,500 worth of the grant money, but we would still collect on the rest of the work that had been done. So you're under no obligation. I just thought since we're doing the work anyways, we might as well just pick some of the other options so that we can continue to maximize our revenue from the grant. And the actual deliverable schedule is also on the agenda memo, the front page of the agenda memo. And if you don't have that handy, I think I can. No, I don't have it with me. I apologize. I'm on vacation. I have no video and I didn't bring everything with me to be prepared.
That's okay. Why don't you take off on the 9 lot short plats then? We'll continue with the presentation.
Okay, so you want me to move on? Is this one self-explanatory?
I think so. I'm seeing a lot of nods.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Go ahead and skip that.
Okay.
Next one. Oh, so I'm sorry. The question here is, do you want me to insert that language in an ordinance for adoption, or do you want the 9 lot subdivision returned to the PC for reconsideration?
One member says adopt it.
Okay. And I will bring the ordinance before you in July. So at that time, you'll be able to ask me specific questions during the adoption, the action item. Okay, if you want to keep going to the next one.
There we go.
SEPA exemption for infills. We will be able to reduce the number of SEPAs, which is the State Environmental Policy Act environmental checklist, by introducing some mixed use and infill language that would streamline our permitting process.
That sounds great. Streamlining of the SEPA process for infill projects, so they don't have to go through as much, get the permits out quicker. I'm seeing yes. I'm seeing a consensus of yes.
How about you just tell me if there's an objection? Otherwise, I will assume you
good.
want them to come forward.
Seeing no objections. Corner drop duplexes.
This would only affect corner lots. They would not affect infill or, I'm sorry, mid-block lots.
Okay. Can you give us an example in town where one of these would go in and would be not installed, but constructed? Yeah, but I'm trying to think of like where though. Like, does it mean that they have to? Yeah. Yeah. So Mrs. Rounds lives on a corner lot. Her front door faces one street. Would the duplex of the other residents face the other street then? Is it like an L-shaped building type thing? Is that what this is suggesting?
Yes, so technically if you could put one driveway towards each street, you could build a duplex on your lot.
Okay, on a corner lot, and that's the intent of a corner lot construction.
Yep. So,
but in this scenario, you would have an entrance off of Davidson and you'd have an entrance off of Buckeye.
No, Buckeye and, no. Fraser Lane. Fraser Lane. Yeah.
Well, you could look Yeah, but you could look at the loophole property and say the same thing. Yes,
Right.
that's what would happen.
And that would be Buckeye and Ford.
Yeah.
I guess that is Ford. Yeah.
Any objections to corner lot duplexes? It just, I think the intent is to maximize the land, isn't it?
Provide new opportunities where they don't exist.
Okay.
Maybe I'm not attractive, right? You know, or maybe I'm just slow, who knows? Could be either one. But why do I get the impression that everything that the state is telling us that we need to change, all it is about cramming as many residents in the town as humanly possible?
Maximizing land availability.
Well, it's, and this,
Whose standard is that?
this ordinance is specifically for increasing your residential building capacity.
Okay. And if we don't dance along with the state's tune, then we don't get the money.
Yes, but in this case, it's $1,850 per change. So if you don't like it, it's not a significant financial loss.
Okay, good, because I don't like any of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plaza. I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing one objection.
Yeah.
One objection to duplexes. So, all right, lot averaging.
Okay. So as I mentioned before, our code currently allows for lot averaging, and that is 5% to 20% of the lots can be below standard. And so basically, for example, if you have 10,000 square feet and you had divided it into a 4,000 square foot lot and a 6,000 square foot lot, the average lot size is 5,000 square feet. So one of them would be bigger and one of them would be smaller. The problem is that those numbers are so low, you will never get an extra lot. You will never get additional density by averaging the lot sizes. So if you had a 10,000 square foot lot, you would never get a 3, a 3, and a 4 because you can't meet a 6,000 square foot minimum lot size.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the properties, some of the homes that have been doing. I don't want to call them flavlex, but like over on the old side of town with the larger lots, they're putting homes behind a home. Would this prevent those landowners over there from subdividing their property to put more in, or this would allow them to do, instead of just one, it would allow them to do 2 homes?
So in this case, it would never allow them to get an extra lot because I think if you go to the next slide, I think I have some of the statistics. Yeah, so it needs to be a 10-acre subdivision with at least 58 lots before you could get 1 extra home.
So when we're talking about lot averaging, you're talking about neighborhoods, not me. I own a piece of property on 11,000 square foot lot and I want to subdivide it.
That's correct.
Okay.
So in the LDR 6, you would have to have at least a 6 and a 4. Because only one of the lots can be less than 6,000 square feet.
So what we're hearing is that if I'm a developer, I can come in now and instead of building 35 homes on Lewis River Road, I can now build 46.
No. You might be able to build 37.
Okay. So it allows the developer to squeeze out a couple more residences. Mrs. Holland.
So the rule currently is that you cannot cram 2 more houses in your side yard. Then why is it in my neighborhood? Why is it the people across from me got to cram 2 houses in their side yard? That's what I've never understood in this town, is that there's rules for things that aren't supposed to happen, but then they happen, and now we're supposed to say, don't do that anymore. Well, yeah.
Unfortunately, that's how when I first moved here, I did a lot of research into prior decisions that the council would make. And when the body was a 5-member board, you had 3 people on the board that had properties that would all do their own rezones. They would all approve it. Meanwhile, you get some old lady, you know, tries to do a rezone and they're like, we're not doing that. And unfortunately, there were a lot of things that just did and that's how we did things. And that's, I think, the desire to move to a more professional, where the rules are equal and everybody's playing the same game, not somebody else doing something different. And I think that's the, here.
Mr. Goddard, I'm seeing on this slide that the city of Woodland currently does not have any property that meets this code, but we would still get paid for it.
Well, so this is our existing standards, that we have no properties where our existing standard makes sense. It's a tool that will not work as it's currently written.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So Mrs. Round said if we annex property into the city, then it would be beneficial at some point to the developer.
Yes.
So let's talk about Aho construction then real quick. And all that out there. If we were to annex that into the 2018 discussion and put this, how many more homes would there be out there?
Well, so I think that's a little different situation, because if they requested annexation, you could do an annexation agreement or a developer's agreement that specifically lays out what you would accept. And if they can live with that, then they would annex into the city. If they can't live with that, then they would just decline to annex.
Then let's say the property is already inside the city limits, then is it still the same scenario?
So maybe I should describe this in a different way. There's a couple ways that we can approach density. In the low density residential 6,000 square foot zoning, the LDR 6, you need to have 6,000 for a square foot lot. So to subdivide your property, you need to have at least 12,000 square feet so that you could end up with one lot at 12 becoming 2 lots at 6. 6 and 6. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you would have 1 lot with 6 and 1 lot with 4.
Which we don't allow right now.
Which you do. And so, but you're not getting any extra units, which is fine. But the other way to think about density is, if you have a 10,000 square foot lot and you build a duplex on it, you now have 2 units on 1 lot. And it's a big lot. So that's another way to think of density. Now you could also say, if you put a triplex on that 10,000 square foot lot, the lot hasn't changed, but you now have a density of 3 units on that lot. Or if you added an accessory dwelling unit, say a mother-in-law's apartment above the garage, you would now have 2 dwelling units on a single lot. So there's many ways that you can achieve density, and one of them is small lots. Only what we're talking about here is the average lot size. So under those different scenarios, you get a 10, a 10, a 10, and a 6 and a 4. So the average of the 6 and a 4 is actually 5.
Mrs. Rounds has a question.
Okay.
How did the scenario work on CC Street where they put in those extra houses?
So they didn't actually use lot averaging because they had big enough lots that they just subdivided.
They were 12,000 or larger.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
So
is that correct?
So they didn't get any bonuses. They didn't ask for any special treatment. They just did a straight up subdivision.
Is there, oh, Mr. Plaza left. Oh, what time is it? I don't even know. Oh, I've got a quarter till. Okay. Any objection on lot averaging from the group? Objection from, okay. I'm not seeing any objection, Mr. Goddard.
Okay. Next one. And the last one is accessory dwelling units. So there are some things that actually, if you could go to the next one. Sorry, keep going. So these are the ADU standards. Actually, if you can click one more time. What the Planning Commission recommended is that we keep one ADU per lot. And they recommended that we keep the standard for accessory dwelling units meeting all building, fire, and electrical plumbing codes. They recommended that we delete the owner occupancy requirement because we can't force owners to live in their house 6 months of the year, and we can't verify whether they do or not. They recommended deleting the occupancy limits because this is technically no longer legal. The city can't define what makes a city, or I'm sorry, what makes a family. Whether it's 2 people or 10 people, we can't define what a family is.
This is a family.
They recommend that we delete the required off-street parking space, and that we delete the single floor of an existing structure. The reason why that one is important is because if you have a garage and you want to put an apartment above the garage, technically you can't do that because the garage is 1 floor and the apartment upstairs is now 2 floors. So even though the entire apartment is upstairs, it's technically a 2nd floor.
Questions on this or objections to this? To these changes? I'm not seeing any, Mr. Goddard.
Okay, next one, click one more time. The Planning Commission also recommended that we remove our lot or our ADU limits. Our current code says you have to have 300 to 800 square feet, but the building code says you can build smaller units. And so the Planning Commission felt we don't need to regulate size twice. So for example, if you buy a tiny home and it's 240 square feet, you should be able to move that tiny home onto a property, even though it's smaller than 300 square feet. So the second thing that they recommended, and that is that we keep the standard for a 40-60 split. So no accessory dwelling unit will be larger than 40% of the home. So, and this is partly because, you know, if you think of a duplex as 50-50, half of the home is one unit, half of the home is another unit. You know, what's the difference between a 40-60? One of them is primary, the other one is accessory. And actually, in the code, I would recommend that we change this to, we change this number to 41% or 39%. And the reason why that's important is because the quirks of the code changes that the state made in 2020 is we can now achieve one of our additional goals of code changes by making the size comparison less restrictive. So if you change this to 41, it is now a higher limit of size.
Mr. Fredericks, I'd like to know if it could be 40.1.
It could be, because all we have to do is increase it, and they're going to give us $1,850.
We just have to increase it and we'll get $1,850.
Yep.
Any objection to 41%? Seeing none, we just made $1,850. Okay, next.
And then these last two are deletions that they also suggested that we make. For some reason, our code says the building official gets to decide how much of the dwelling unit can be used as an accessory structure, and that makes no sense.
Okay.
And I think there might be one more of these. There you go. And click one more time. Delete it.
I agree.
Yeah. And these are just removing limitations on what lots can have accessory dwelling units. So even if you have a small lot in downtown Woodland, if you can fit an accessory dwelling unit in the backyard, then it should be an option.
I know what you're thinking. Here we go. Finally. Me too. She's got enough room back there for 3 units.
Well, under ADU standards, you could only get one extra.
She's way to ruin the dream, Travis.
Now, there's also some standards that we really need to keep in there. The only problem is they're building standards. They're not conditional use permits. Like, for example, we want the primary structure and the accessory structure to look the same. Same siding, same roofing material. Otherwise, it's going to look like a hodgepodge. Each individual lot will look funny. Should be, compatible with surrounding single-family uses. They should keep the same roof pitch, siding, and windows. So those are kind of the design things that we won't know until they apply for a building permit. So it seems kind of silly that we would require a conditional use permit for something that they haven't even designed and may not design for months or years. So that's it.
There were no objections, Mr. Goddard.
Then I will bring you an ordinance next month. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good vacation.
There we go. And we are back in there. And Melissa, take it away. Are we gonna need more than 8 minutes to discuss?
Should we postpone?
How long of a presentation do you have?
I don't, probably 10 to 20 minutes. I'm sure that we will want to discuss as well, so we could save for another night.
Can we, okay. Yeah. I forgot about the ordinance, okay.
And can we move later not to have hour-long discussions for each thing and have 3 to 5 of them packed onto a meeting?
Okay.
Like none of this ever goes quickly.
Okay.
So,
We'll do some better time planning. I think we're gonna kick this one.
Okay.
We'll look at the agenda for July and see. I know that the 6th is already getting packed, so we may have to push it to the second meeting in July, but we'll roundtable and get back. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, and the Councilmember Fredericks is asking the purpose of this discussion this evening.
It was to ask for direction on staff action for retail marijuana and 20 after 4.
Okay, I think we'll discuss this. I'll call we'll discuss this tomorrow.
Okay. We could take staff level action without consulting council if since they're already open, that might be the path to do, or we could talk at an executive team meeting.
Okay, let's do that. We will do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, the time is now 9:54. We are out of workshop mode. Moving on to action item G, ordinance number 1486, declaration of emergency moratorium in accepting applications which include residential units and commercial zones within the city of Woodland, first and final reading. Yes.
I was under the impression we were going to talk about this in the workshop before we took action on it tonight. Is that not correct?
Oh, I guess that is
I
correct.
could just be misunderstood.
I thought we already discussed it, I think.
Oh,
We were going to, but then the plan changed.
okay.
So that was the plan, and then we added it in. You still have discussion, yes.
Got it. Okay.
Did I do something wrong? You've got 5 minutes to yell at me.
No, I just,
Mr. Goddard is still on the line for questions and answers.
I am.
During discussion, if there is one.
I would have felt a lot more comfortable.
Oh.
If it's been on the agenda. Public on the agenda. I have a kind of a personal policy that if it's not on the agenda, and under part of the constitute an emergency on mine, but I do understand this case is urgent, and I'm understanding and appreciative of that. So,
and I will state that the council rules do allow for this type of procedure. However, we do try not to use that rule, but it does allow for it.
correct.
So moving on to action item G, ordinance number 1486.
Move to approve. Action item G.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Rounds, seconded by Councilmember Chapman. Councilmember Rounds.
Well, we discussed it some, so and this is an emergency, so I think that's all I need to say.
Councilmember Chapman.
No comment.
Further discussion. Mr. Fredericks.
As long as we're making progress, I have no objection to approving.
Anything further? All right, seeing none, I'll take the vote on action item G, ordinance number 1486, emergency moratorium against accepting applications which include residential units and commercial zones within the city limits of Woodland, first and final reading. Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Ordinance number 1486 has passed. The time is now 9:58. Would you like to hang out for 2 more minutes, or I'll accept a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilmember Holland, second by Councilmember Chapman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The time is 9:58. Thank you, everybody.